Well, why is there such a disparity between the wealthy and the poor in the United States? You could blame it on the Fed. And actually, that's even coming from the most wealthy that are honest about it. And Putin the cat knows, he knows. He's a good cat. Now, anybody tells you, just to diverge here a second, anybody tells you that frequencies don't influence the body, they should ask a cat, because that's why cats purr. They heal with their purring, they heal with their frequencies. But the healing of the economy should have been done if the Fed was going to be using it, stimulus spending, it should have went into the productive middle class. And that is not where it went to. It actually went to, well, to give you a big hint, Berkshire Hathaway, old boy over there, and besides him, George Soros and Warren Buffett. Not Soros is not Berkshire Hathaway, but I'm saying Warren Buffett. He was one of the ones that says, oh, the economy is going to crash if we don't bail out, everything in TARP and all this kind of stuff. And, it would have crashed him. So really what goes on is the Fed, and if the Fed was actually the Fed of the people, which would really be, let's call it the Congress, it would have been, the stimulation would have went into the hands of the productive middle class. Now, there's always a video I think I put, it is actually, I put it down in the information notes on the silver videos that I put out, that in Austria, not Australia, Austria, and it's not the Austrian School of Economics, but they did this experiment in the 1930s using local currencies, local fiat currencies that were backed by the Australian Central Bank reserve notes, whatever, and they issued them into the population where there was a productive middle class. And what happened was, since it was the productive middle class, hey, this is somebody's building framing, this one's making, furniture, or reupholstering furniture, this one's doing plumbing, this one's making wooden clocks or something. I don't know, it was back in the 30s, right? What happened was the money got injected into, loaned into the small businesses. And what happened is they didn't even have to inject anywhere near as much stimulus money into the economy, because this velocity of money picked up because it was in the hands of the productive middle class. Somebody would do something, and with the money, and they would invest in it, they would produce more, and then people would buy the goods from them, and the money just went around in a circle much faster, and the velocity of money picked up a lot. What's going on today, we got the damn crony capitalism with Uncle Tom Obama as our president, and he's all hooked in with Wall Street to the max. So what's going on, why there's a disparity between wealthy and poor? I know they put out, it's the race, actually, well, it is a lot of the whites have the freaking, or they're the ones attached to the financial system the most, I know that. But it's not even just that, because what's going on is the vast majority of people are not hooked in with the financial system, and it's the people that are hooked in with the financial system that are seeing the most benefits from the stimulus that's coming out from the Fed. The Fed stimulus is actually just shoring up, like Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett, the investors, the bondholders, anybody that's invested in the markets. As a matter of fact, the Fed has made now we've seen the markets come down today a couple hundred points, and oil's crashed even another 3%. Now, in the case of oil, I swear I'm almost positive that's 100% a deal to squeeze Vladimir Putin. And if you look back in the late 80s, it was the price of oil coming down that actually, theoretically, on the surface, that broke apart the Soviet Union because they couldn't keep up their military spending. But I was always privy to another theory about that, because, and I don't think it was a theory, because it was predicted back in the 70s what was going to happen in the late 80s or 89. When the Soviet Union dissolved, Glasnost came out, they had a restructuring, perestroika, the Berlin Wall came down, the Germanys were reunited, they had solidarity in Poland. That was all being talked about by Major Anatoly Golitsyn, former KGB major, as a plot on the inside of the KGB circle to befriend the West. And it was something where they would get more technology from the West, and it was a long-range strategic strategy against the West. So I don't think it really came down by the actions of the West bringing down the oil prices. They're trying to repeat that same scenario this time. I don't think it's going to work, because actually Putin has been making vast inroads in, well, with India, trade with India. Indian military is going to be trained in Russia. Russia is going to be selling India arms. So, like, they're losing money on oil, but they're selling arms to India. They also made a lot of deals with Turkey. Turkey's going to be buying a lot of cheap Russian natural gas, and Russia's also going to be building the pipelines through Turkey. So, like what happened in Ukraine with the pipelines, or whatever they're trying to do under the Black Sea with pipelines, they're just going to run it through Turkey. So Turkey's now a strategic partner with Russia, and that kind of moves them away from or out of NATO. So Mr. Obama is really screwing up to the max, man. I don't know if it's on purpose or what. It may be. I don't know. It may be. Because actually, if you look back at the political, history of Obama and some of the people that are high up in office, they've been communists all their life, and they're anti. The New World Order wants a weak USA to bring everything flattened out into one even plane, where it's going to be under one hat. But just getting back to the topic of why, what's going on with the elite, why there's such a disparity between the wealthy and the poor. It's because the system actually is pretty much rigged. But I don't want to make the assertion that it's hopeless. People actually buy into a lot of superfluous garbage that the elite sell. You look at Apple, for instance. Apple's a stock that's been going up bigger and bigger. It's actually, Apple stock is worth more than the entire Russian stock market. But why the hell would you, it's almost like, get the latest gadget, get the latest this, get the latest that. Why the hell do you need to invest in that garbage? It's like sometimes the latest greatest is really not doing you that much good. It's almost like a status symbol, and people have to have the latest status symbol. People seem to gravitate to the most superfluous bullshit out there, in some ways. And that's not the problem of the presenters, it's actually the problem of the people themselves. Now, actually, I thought it was an interesting point. I actually just put out a video that probably took off more viral than any of my videos in the past. It was about the DNA of a male that was, if it was inside a woman, it would affect her for the rest of her life, the living DNA of the male. Now, that makes a lot of sense even from a common sense perspective, because your DNA is your energy and your genetic code, and it's actually a living organism. And it probably goes a little more along some of the spiritual lines where you have one man or one woman or whatever, even though I'm not really hardcore on that type of stuff. But looking back at all the videos I put out about energy medicine and how we can influence our DNA, how we can influence our psyche for better positive attitudes and more intelligence through frequencies, how we can repair and heal even with bio-north, which is actually magnetic south. It's called bio-north in the magnetic field. How we can heal and repair with frequencies. All those type of things don't get any attention, but when you're talking about sex, they get all kinds of attention. So, like, actually, a lot of times, the elite have a strategy, and they have a hold on the population up to a point. But the other side of it is actually people make their own choices, and they kind of run to superfluous things too readily. And the real way to fight the elite is actually just to keep your head down and work hard, and keep a positive attitude, and not bite on all the superfluous that is out there, because that is usually what they're selling you through, massive entertainment. Like I try to have, on this channel, I kind of put things out, I have a weird way, I have a different style of doing things. I put out more serious information, or more interesting information maybe, but I don't put it out in a very rigid way. I don't like I don't like trying to make it too boring, That's why my style is like that. I'll kind of mix it up with, almost like a little more comic, but it's serious stuff. But I mean, I don't like being so drab and gray and like, because it gets too boring, man. You know, even like I don't even like putting myself in front of this all the time. I just do it to mix it up, you know. So, but the reason, and actually, you know, I know a lot of people are kind of fed up what's going on in the West, and they're running to Vladimir Putin like he's the solution, like he's going to save us. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's 135 oligarchs in Russia, which includes Vladimir Putin with his $50 billion or whatever the hell he's got, or something like that, and his gun war, his Swiss-based trading company, which is registered in Cyprus, so he doesn't have to pay taxes on capital gains of commodities and oil. There's 135 oligarchs in Russia, which is actually the state itself, that owns 35% of the entire Russian wealth. And I've actually seen a lot of things that they have in warehouses, not just gold, not just, well, I don't know what they have in palladium. I'd really be interested in knowing because they have the Russian stockpiles there, but also isotopes, Caesium-133 isotopes, these atomic weapon triggers, copper isotopes, all kinds of isotopes, and they're worth like billions. I actually seen essays on them and stuff like that, and none of that stuff, and you look up these people that own this stuff, none of them are on Forbes. None of them are on Forbes. None of them. So actually, you know, the information you get on the net when you click on a button who the wealthiest people in the world are, that isn't correct, you know. But the way they're keeping this wealth is, you know, partly through the people themselves are very easily being led astray. The people themselves can throw a monkey wrench in the works on elite plans real easily, because the elite in Russia are screwing over the Russians, and the elite in the United States are screwing over the people in the United States. Neither one, you know, Vladimir Putin is not a solution to the problem. That's that's a real key point. And the other side of it is that, you know, we need to work together as a people on different sides of the world against these bastards. You know? And the way to do that is to stick with 101 freaking nuts and bolts types of things. Whereas, you know, people seem to gravitate to things that, this makes me special. Look at me. I have this. I have the newest style. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but a lot of times you can get a lot more value out of something than buying something that is high dollar. But no, there's a lot of people just got to buy high dollar with a lot of profit margin on it. And you know where that goes into, the pockets of the elite. You know, so it's like value is everything. Value is the word you want to watch the most. But the other side of it is, even more important than health is, and then wealth is health. I let it out of the bag there. In other words, when you look at people like George Soros, and you look at somebody like Warren Buffett, or even Jim Rogers, you know, some of the people, like even up in Siberia, let's give an example of Russian Siberians in northern Siberia, they may live to be well over 100 years old and be extremely healthy. Or people in Okinawa, Japan, live to be well over 100 years old, be very vibrant, alert, healthy, still be having all the fun. They can even, you know, I've seen people in Okinawa, Japan, that were over 100 years old, that were very active, that were smokers and drinkers. And I'd give them the beer, you know, they'd be like drinking that stuff right down, man. Orion, oh my God, man. And there was guy was out there, that was one example, he was 88, he was still farming, and he was solid as a rock and everything, and real strong, and you know, he just couldn't compete. You know, that's somebody who's in an investment house in Wall Street, so that's not going to have that. And he was a very happy person too, very happy person, out in the sunlight and everything, you know, all the day, and felt, you know, good with nature. So, you know, it's almost like there's a lot of things these yo-yos miss out on, and there's a lot of things I'm dropping dimes on this channel that is probably far more important than a recent video I put out that was, you know, got popular because, you know, it had to do with sexual, you know, transfer of sperm into the female that could possibly affect her brain for life. And it was like, whoa, everybody got into the attention on that. But if we're talking about DNA or the brain being affected by frequencies, that's too boring. You know, that's too boring. And how many videos did I put out about that and did not get attention? So part of the reason, you know, things happen a certain way is because of the way people are geared. They want, you know, they're like here and now, what makes me special, what makes me get attention, what you know, you know, if this person has the best life, you know, it's like Hollywood tells people how to think sometimes, right? But they play that same game in the corporate world too, you know? I mean, a lot of these people think they're freaking like, oh yeah, they have this, they have that. And it isn't like it's so freaking hunky-dory in their life, you know, really, all the way. And also, I can't remember that guy's name just recently. He died. He fell off, he was a banker, and I think in the UK. He fell off after his divorce. He paid so many millions of dollars to his divorce attorneys, and he fell off this height from an apartment, and he hit a balcony railing and basically, you know, killed him, like with a pretty horrible death. But I also read he was dealing with the Russian oligarchs, and he went broke, and he went into millions of pounds of debt too. Those guys ain't nice, man. That's all the stuff Putin protects. That's all the stuff Putin protects, man. He protects them. He investigates people that are coming up from the outside and aren't in the inner circle. That's what he does. We got garbage going on both sides of the globe, man. I just want to point that out. And, you know, people like Gerald Chooch Salente and Mike Rivero, they're not telling you that. They're just cheerleaders for Putin. But what we got going on today is we got the elite are getting more and more wealthy, and they're doing it through the central banks. Because anybody, if you look at the top 1 basis point, not the top 1%, but the 1% of the 1%, which is the 1 basis point, they're actually all pretty much, most of them are connected to the financial system. And what does the actual financial system do? Nothing. Nothing. You know? They actually, what they do is they provide money to stimulate the economy, but where? Usually for the investors, right? So what is that telling you? What's that telling you? The investors got an inside track to, you know, wealth, and you don't. But where you can screw them up is staying right down to earth. I know a lot of people get kind of bored by that, but when you start getting into it and you got a little bit of discipline to stay down to earth, because some of the stuff I put out here is so cheap to do. Now, I like this thing with this Spooky 2 rifle machine. It's not the be-all, end-all of everything, maybe, but to me, that's one of the most effective things and the most bang for the buck for influencing your health and also maybe even your intelligence. And I know I put out a video about the male sperm, that if it's in a woman through unprotected sex, the DNA might theoretically affect them for the rest of their life. Well, the other thing that can affect you for the rest of your life maybe is using a Mobius coil with frequencies on with a DNA in a Mobius coil with frequencies to that can affect you in a positive way. A positive way, because actually all this stuff is all interrelated, and you know, financial is not the whole you know, it be all and end all of everything. Like I said, there's people out there that live much longer, healthier lives that are much more happy, far more happier than people that have a lot of wealth. The people with a lot of wealth like to put on a big show that they're big happy, and they have this, and that's why they're happy. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. But I personally, you know, I know like when they had the bailouts last time, they tried to stop them, and the elite were saying we're going to crash the whole economy if you don't have the bailouts. Well, I know it wasn't stopped, and there was a lot of people trying to stop the bailouts. Now, actually, if the bailouts were stopped, Warren Buffett would be a lot smaller than he is. He's part of the crooked game. But I say this, the next time this happens, what I think is the target is people's retirement money, which is wrapped up in, you know, the biggest, you know, like J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and, you know, people, you know, Fidelity or whatever, who are all managing this, even Vanguard. And when you see this market correction this next time, I think it's going to cause the government to step in and say we have to be a shareholder in these entities, just like they did with General Motors, and that may be the actual ultimate goal, to grab a lot of people's retirement money, because now we have so much spending going on in the government. It's $18 trillion. They just passed a $1.1 trillion spending bill in the House, and it's continuing to go up. Where's the liquidity going to come from? The only place that's really left is the nest eggs of all the people that have worked all their lives. That will be the liquidity. And it'll tell you it's still safe, but that doesn't mean they can't use it in some way or borrow against it to keep spending and spending and spending. The goal is actually to break the United States, to bring it into a one world order. That's what they're trying to do. But we have to remember that we as a people in the United States and people in Russia and China are all working against the elite in their respective countries, because they're all playing this game and they're all trying to use, when they get in trouble and the focus is on them, they pull out the patriot card, which is something Vladimir Putin often does. I'm a great Russian patriot. I'm freaking trying to fight the West. And yeah, right, sure, buddy. Sure. Yeah, he's a thug, and he's a wealthy thug. He's a mafia boss of the mafia bosses in Russia. That's what he is. That's exactly what he is. So what's going on between disparity between wealthy and the poor is really being fueled by the central banks everywhere, including Russia. Even though they're buying gold, there's a lot of people in Russia that even now are saying that the central banks in Russia are totally crooked, and doesn't surprise me at all. It's not Western propaganda. It's actually coming out from Russian sources. But what I have to tell you, though, is that there's so many things that the elite do not know. You know, one of the things actually I put out here, and I put out many videos on, was the Georges-Lakhovsky multi-wave oscillator that uses 3 Tesla coils in one area and an ascending and receiving Tesla coil and an array of copper coils. That has been known as a true anti-aging, reverse aging device that will cured well over 90% or 98% of terminal patients. You know, and you say, well, where is it today? Well, I don't know. Georges-Lakhovsky got hit and run by a limousine in New York City when he went back to New York City in 1942, and the device was taken out of the major prestigious hospital that it was working extremely well at, and never to be heard of again. And they rediscovered these things back in Italy now, just recently, but it's relatively unknown. And I guarantee you, even people like Warren Buffett and George Soros, they don't even know about this. They'd be using it. They get what the problem is with a lot of the elite. And I put this out before, they're surrounded by the BBB, the big bucks bullshit. They're surrounded by the big bucks bullshit, the freaking professionals that have to have a big fat fee to keep them on a retainer, so they keep telling them and feed them a line of shit. That's why you have these special medical doctors that say, oh yeah, we got this and we can give you this, we can inject it. And you know, they could just spend $5,000 and get a Lakhovsky coil built somewhere custom, and probably do way better than all the crap the doctors are doing for them in a million years, and fire those doctors. Maybe, right? But nope. They're surrounded by the BBB, the big bucks bullshit. That's what happens with all the wealthy. They get victimized by the same shit. They buy their money, essentially. Buy their own money. So, anyway, I went lengthy on this, but I just wanted to kind of put it in a broad perspective and common sense rationale, because the situation is grave, and the situation has always been grave. We've always had problems. There's always been shit like this going on in the world since day one, right? But what I'm telling you is, it's not just the elite, it's the people themselves. The people themselves, if they see the truth, you know, it's a very, I forgot exactly who said it, but you know, it's like, it's very rare that the man actually comes across the truth by tripping over it, and he falls down, he sees the truth right there, and what happens is he quickly gets up, dusts himself off, and runs in another direction because you're too busy to actually see the truth. You know? So, and I just kind of noticed that with sometimes what videos on my channel become more popular, and what videos that I put out that actually are really real gems that are very important, like about using fields of electricity to stimulate seeds to make super crops. What is that, 500 hits? 500 hits? You know what I mean? Why is that? It's the people themselves. So I got to put things out, I guess, in a way to grab people's attention. So I'm going to probably use them, and that's partly why I put things out that are important in a almost a superfluous way, in almost a stupid way, because that's the only thing, that's the only way I get it across to people. But I'm actually trying to tell people some real gems. And I think in the future, this lesson I've just learned about this last video, I just took off pretty fast. I'm going to start doing them like that in a stupid way, because it's the stupid way that grabs your attention, but I want to put real solid information in here, because we actually do have a way to fight the elite, big time. And it's not like we're going to fight them. It's like we're going to do for ourselves. And the elite, they can go get wrapped up in all the big bucks bullshit that's all around them and go down and get sink from that crap, because, you know, the truth is mighty and it shall prevail. That's an old Roman saying. I believe in that very much. The truth is mighty and it shall prevail. Okay? Over now.